Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a focus enhancement app for ADHDers. That's adults with both combined autism and ADHD. I'm Jeremy, I'm an ADHDer myself. I'm the founder of Focus Bear and also one of the hosts of this podcast. I built Focus Bear for myself originally because I was constantly getting distracted by my phone and my laptop. I wanted a way to tame my ADHD monkey mind so I'd stop going down rabbit holes and actually get work done, but also get off my computer and my phone in the evening so I'd be able to sleep properly. It's working perfectly for me and it's helping a lot of ADHDs as well. I'd love for you to try it. It's available for Mac, Windows, iOS and Android, and it leverages most of the productivity strategies we talk about on the podcast. You can jump onto focusbear.io or just Google Focus Bear and try it out. Let me know what you think. Welcome to episode number 93 of the Focus and Chill podcast. We're thrilled to be joined by Swantje Lorrimer today. Swantje's one and only full-time job ended with her suing the company for sexual harassment. Regardless, she has built her own adventure freelance career, spanning several countries and tapping into her creativity in different ways. She worked in academic research in philosophy and on major stage and film productions, including Star Wars and The Fall Guy. She is now a credentialed ADHD coach, empowering neurodivergent individuals to run with their strengths. Welcome to the show, Swantje.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's really cool to have you on. So let's start with hearing about your own experience with neurodiversity. When did you realize you weren't neurotypical?
Well, that's a bit of a funny story because my children, I've got 3 children, they're now young adults, and they all struggled in their own way. The middle one got diagnosed with autism when she was 7. None of them felt ever at home in the world or comfortable in their own skin. And it was really unnerving for a mother, for a migrant, to realize. It made me feel really uncomfortable. And I didn't realize that there was something different in me as well. I thought it was moving countries and being an overloaded young mother. Anyway, when I went with the youngest to an ADHD coach after she got diagnosed, I thought he was just full of rubbish because he was talking about me. And I didn't have a problem. I was fully functional. And why was he talking to my daughter in that way and explaining all the stuff to her? So I made an appointment by myself, paid good money to take him to the cleaner, so to speak, and said, what are you talking, indoctrinating the youth? And he just sort of smiled and said, tell me a bit about your life. And he gave me the names of 2 psychiatrists. And I said, just saying, get checked out. And sure enough, so I got diagnosed 6 years ago and everything fell into place, actually. Absolutely everything.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Your child was being given tips on how to deal with you. Was that essentially what was happening?
And I thought, but don't talk to my child like that, we're not done. And anyway, so you asked what that was like. I mean, everything fell into place. And before I was diagnosed, I thought I was sort of struggling like nobody else. I was almost like an alcoholic hiding their struggles and trying to pretend that they were managing. I would leave my purse at home when I went to the petrol station. Then I had to chat to the guy at the petrol station and, make up some story and try and pay for the petrol, run home, pay for the petrol and still be on time somewhere else. It was so stressful. And once you're diagnosed, you can sort of settle into, I can't do normal and bear with me.
I was interested when you were saying before you were a new migrant and you're from Germany originally.
Yeah. Yeah, but well, that's another thing, when did I notice I wasn't neurotypical? I left home when I was 16 and I went to Finland.
Mm.
I didn't speak a word of Finnish. I was milking goats in a hippie commune, and I was living in a small town and working in a geriatric ward in hospital. And I mean, I just had not an academic interest or bone in my body. So for me, as a teenager to sit in school, I don't know, I just wanted adventure. When we think about dopamine hits, I really wanted the big fat dopamine hit, and I wanted adventure. So yeah, and then I went back to Germany and did my, what is the HSC, the Abitur. I thought after that experience would be probably pretty good to have an education, if not to live like that. And then, yeah, I went back to Finland and couldn't see myself ever in any kind of situation where I had to use my brain, because I didn't trust my brain. Whether my brain was on or off was totally out of my control. So going to uni wasn't an option. So I trained as a tailor, and I didn't realize that nobody really would probably employ me with sort of tailoring. How many tailors are there? Not many. So what do you do with a tailoring TAFE course? How do you earn money? I mean, how do you earn your money? I hadn't really thought that through either. So I went to London. I thought everything will happen in London. Everything will fall into place. Lots of magical and wishful thinking. And things fell into place. I got a job after a year of trying all sorts of things. I got a job at the English National Opera. And that was amazing. As a young woman in London, I got a small motorbike and lived in a squat. Had a very low wage, but I was able to do all sorts of things because I barely paid rent. And I could go anywhere on my little bike. And I saw Pavarotti and for £5. And yeah, that was amazing. But unfortunately, that was my one and only full-time job that sort of went pear-shaped, and I was left to be a freelancer. It just worked out because I fell on my feet and I did what I loved. And every show was different and every requirement was different. You worked with leather or traditional tailoring or knitting and just fabulous for the dopamine-seeking brain.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of a repetitive job.
Oh, like a pig in mud. Yes, that was awesome.
In terms of the cultural aspect of it as well, I'm curious about, compared to Germany, did you find Finland and England, I guess, more ADHD compatible? Because I'm part German, small part,
Interesting.
and I've spent some time in Germany, and the autistic side of me really likes Germany because there's parts of it where it's very, super structure. Okay, it may be challenging.
Can't do Germany at all. I can't do Germany at all. And the biggest example is, the most poignant example that comes to mind was my dad was critically ill, and just before he passed, I went over with a newborn baby. This is 25 years ago. And I was the sole carer for my mother, who was ill, and my dying father, and this 3-month-old baby. And I put a nappy in the wrong recycle bin. And there was a knock on the door, and the caretaker knocked on the door and said, I found this nappy in the paper bin. And I looked at him, and I can't even explain what went through my mind. Like, are you from a different universe? Have you got any idea what I'm dealing with? And how does it matter in the scale of things in the universe? And I just thought, gosh, there couldn't be anything more German than somebody knocking on your door anyway. Look, Finland is, Finland is also a bit like Germany in the whole aspect of clarity and procedure process. London is or was in the 90s fairly, crazy enough for me. I loved it. Central London, very much on offer.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess we're talking about that when it came to understanding what are my kids and why aren't they coping, I thought, is it maybe that, in the end of the day, I'm this cultural mix of all sorts of things, and what am I instilling in them? And is it maybe because I'm a bit all over the place culturally that they on the North Shore in Sydney don't find things very straightforward? I had no idea. And I had no idea about neurodiversity. I mean, needless to say.
Mm. Yeah, wouldn't have been talked about very much, say, 6 years ago.
Well, no. And my son's 26. And I mean, I spotted that there was something that he didn't sort of feel part of the world. And wherever I took this concern, I was just sort of deemed the helicopter mother. And so, yeah, 20 years ago. And we're right slap bang in the middle of Sydney, right? So we're not at the edges of the Northern Territory where you would expect to not have specialists around you. But even 20 years ago, right in the middle of Sydney was not the going rate. And when my daughter was diagnosed with autism and ADHD, aged 7, so that was 2008 or something, we weren't even given a book or a leaflet or no information. Here's your Ritalin, here's your diagnosis, goodbye.
Mm. Yeah, no psycho education or anything like that.
No. So I've got to say, I know we've got a long way to go. I know we have got such a long way to go, but boy, even in the last 20 years, it's worth pausing and saying like, wow, pretty incredible. And where can we be in 10 years' time if we all work together and advocate for ourselves, I think, because that's the most effective way to change public opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about for yourself that a lot of things have fallen into place since the diagnosis. Can you talk about some of the changes that have happened?
Yeah, I guess for me, in terms of practical aspects, I know that I shouldn't send. I can write emails in the evening when medication has worn off, but I shouldn't send them. That is one thing. I shouldn't do anything unmedicated because I'm so much more, not unemotional, but a lot more regulated. So emotions and reason and everything in one place. I think since my diagnosis, everything's fallen into place. I look at my life backwards and everything makes sense all of a sudden.
Mm.
Not being able to do school, not even contemplating going to uni, just being so restless. It's really scary with ADHD to be an unbelievably high performer one moment, and the next moment it's all gone. It's like the brain's washed out of your head and you're left with nothing. Only you're left with people looking at you in disbelief, like, what was that? And all this shame about feeling so immature all the time. And I feel now, well, what's immature about being alive and being able to think outside the box and see things other people don't see? What's immature about that? So I think I've sort of landed in my life and felt really at home, started feeling at home. And career change, boom, like since diagnosis, the things I've been able to achieve with a lot more direction and energy and confidence. So that's fantastic. Yeah.
It sounds like you've been able to find a perfect niche for yourself.
Yeah. So I guess career-wise, when I was diagnosed, I was freelancing here in Sydney as a tailor. So when we came to Australia, I had one child and it just pregnant with the second. It was just not viable for me to work as a tailor. It's not paid well enough to pay for childcare for 2 kids. And there's so few full-time jobs anyway. So, and freelancing, setting up all the networks with small children was crazy. So my husband actually, bless him, he enrolled me at university. He said, you would love that. And I said, what? I've never written an essay in my life. What are you on about? And he said, no, you will go nuts if you're at home with 2 small children in a new country. And you know what? I went to uni and I absolutely loved it. I loved it so much. I went like, what? Where have I been? That people are talking about all of this stuff and they make it a profession. So I absolutely loved it. Then years later, after my degree and after working as a research assistant, somebody said, gosh, they need tailors on Aladdin. And I went, what? They need tailors on Aladdin? Take me. So this is like fast forward 15 years. I had forgotten how to put stuff together. And I just sort of, thank God for the internet. I bought a few tailoring books and still had my shears and my equipment, some of it. And I just rocked up and did stuff for Aladdin and Frozen and Harry Potter and you name it, Yeah, set up a little workshop in my downstairs. And so I did that while I was diagnosed. And then COVID came and all the shows stopped. No rehearsals, no fittings. And I had a bit of a moment of soul searching. And I thought, is that really what you want to do? Making costumes for people. And when you work on a movie, that you don't get any notice that the schedule changes and you have to work through the night to do changes. And you're like, really? I'm going to get old doing this and my fingers will fall off my hands, if I keep wearing myself out like that. And I looked at my kids struggling, young adults, and I said, you know what? I've got this academic, rigorous background. So I just enrolled in a course in New York, did an online training to be an ADHD coach and have not looked back because it really combines two things. It combines the creativity, whether it is thinking or building or making, and the science, the brain science, and what is a human being? Who are we? And
Yeah, just a small questions, right? What is a human being? And nothing big, right?
why are we here? Yeah. And I think we live in a time which is so complicated and multifaceted. There are so many layers to everything. And we forget, with a background in a bit of social philosophy, sociology, we think it's us, it's me, it's a personal issue. And it's so fabulous to be able to step back and tell clients that, you live in the 21st century in the developed world. And this is why part of your problems are what they are. We are so introvert in so many ways and introspected and think it's everything. I have a gaming addiction. I have a issue with doom scrolling. And I go like, well, everybody does. Shall we just unpack why that is? And it's the same with psychoeducation. You explain to people why their brain works the way it does and what we may be able to do about it. And you can feel they're growing. They're growing. They're getting taller there and then. And all this moral failing is just dropping off their shoulders. And it's wonderful just by virtue of explaining to people, where do you live? Where are you in space and time?
I love the approach that you're taking to it, which is someone comes to you with a problem like, Swantje, I'm doom scrolling all the time and I can't get to sleep. But your take on it is kind of like, sure, your brain works a little bit differently to everyone else, but also this is a common humanity thing. This isn't necessarily like a ADHD thing. How do you find the balance between given the gift of like saying your brain works differently and you are kind of like other people as well? You know what I mean? So you can't just throw up your hands and say like, oh, it's my ADHD. You have agency to take control of this.
Yeah. I mean, I think Russell Barkley says, and I love him anyway, but I love the saying, look, ADHD or neurodivergence is an explanation. It's not an excuse. So I guess we are like everybody else, we're not that special, but we are special. So we struggle with everything else like the rest of the world, but certain areas we are more hyper-focused in, or we find it harder to self-soothe, or we find it harder to switch off, or we feel rejection more strongly. So it's beautiful to normalize that these are struggles that everybody has got, but we feel them for whatever reasons a little bit more stronger. Does that answer your question?
I think so. If I'm understanding it, it's basically that everyone faces these problems, but because our brains work a little bit differently, we might experience them a little bit more strongly in the same way that someone might experience the cold or the heat more than the others. And so if you experience the cold more than other people, you might have to pack more like warm clothes when you go to a place. In the same way, if you've got some ADHD, then maybe you need to have certain other types of equipment or protocols in order to accommodate you. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, but also we've got less self-awareness. And that is something we've got a little bit less of self-awareness. We might have a little bit less confidence. because we're living in a world that's not quite wired for us. And if we don't, when we talked a moment ago about how I felt after my diagnosis, everything fell into place. If you don't quite understand why you keep feeling out of sync with the world, it's much harder to control it or to have a sense of agency that you can do anything about anything, actually. So once you explain that to people and give them a few tools, sort of a few off buttons and a few switches to switch things on, they can partake in the world and regulate themselves in relation to the world so much better.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, when you're not helping clients, what do you enjoy getting up to in your free time?
Oh, I love ultralight hiking. I just did the Larapinta Trail with my husband, which is 250k in the Northern Territory.
Mm.
And that was such a spiritual experience, just to be there in the big, big world with the big mountains and the unbelievably huge sky.
Mm.
So I've been joining a bushwalking club here in Sydney, and I've been out nearly every weekend. That's one thing. I still have got my workshop, and I do still love making things, make things all the time. I recently, or maybe a year ago or so, I really got into bookbinding. So I do a lot of illustration and just mark making, drawing, bookbinding. I want to run classes for young neurodivergent adults and teens because I think we all struggle with loneliness. And I think it's a lot of teens I work with, they are some of them are really sick of talking to adults. The worried parents want them to manage in the world and then take them places. And I think it's just really powerful to do peer support and to just have them in the room. If they want to talk about time management or exchange hacks, great. But what we're here for, we're just here to have fun, and we do some sewing or some illustration or bookbinding or what else do I do? I'm still doing the odd gig for commercials. So I've done it's the dopamine hit when the phone rings and somebody says, I need 2 sofas by the end of the week. Can you upholster? I go like, I'll be able to squeeze that in. And then I get the kids to help me. And currently, as we speak, the phone rang on Tuesday, and I came back from a walk with a friend. I was really unmedicated. I was hot and bothered. Phone rang and somebody said, I need a monkey. Can you monkey? And I went like, oh, that sounds so cute. That's what I'm doing in my spare time now. I'm knitting a monkey for a Calico Lakes commercial. Yeah, that's sort of how the time sometimes goes. You just try to be normal, and then something happens, and it just sounds too good to say no to.
Yeah, that's my challenge too. My no button seems to be stuck sometimes, and I default to yes.
I love the no button. I love drawing concepts. I don't know are you guys visual learners?
Joey is. I'm trying to become one.
Oh.
I was just going to say I draw mind maps and stuff like that when I'm doing reviews. So I'm not sure, like visual learners means more that like process things visually, right? Rather than someone talking to you. Yeah.
And so in coaching sessions, I don't want to hog the space and just go blah, 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 blah. And because people tune out and it's their hour, who am I to just sit there and talk about stuff that I think they need to know? That's not fair. So I love drawing concepts and things that are useful potentially. And then I go like, here, do you know what I mean? Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. So when you set the no button, I've got this thing with the executive function button. I've got to send it to you. People without EF button. This thing like where, we were just born without that executive function button. Neurotypical people just press it and they do mow the lawn or do wash the dishes, and we haven't got that button. I've got to send it to you.
I'd love to talk a bit more about, you're mentioning the search for dopamine hits, right? And you've got this kind of like request come in and, hey, can you upholster my couch? Sure, that sounds like a fun adventure. How do you, I guess, prioritize your life so that you can work on more longer term projects like your ADHD coaching practice?
Oh, Lord. Well, that is the problem. That is the problem, that there's only 20. For me, so time is our biggest problem. the fact that we can't sense time like other people can, that is our biggest problem. To this very day, I think time is like chewing gum, that if I stretch it, I can get more of it. And I struggle with this every day. And I guess I make it work, not by the way one should do it. Hands up. I'm not doing it the proper way. I do it my way and it seems to work. I'm blessed with a lot of energy. I'm blessed with good health. I'm blessed with the fact that I can go with absolutely no sleep. I've worked on a show for 30 hours straight.
Whoa.
And I had to get my husband. I had so much stuff to take on a film set. Couldn't get an Uber. My husband took me there and picked me up after 30 hours. But when you say yes to something like, oh, can you do this couch for a commercial? And I say yes, I then tell my son, and I might ring somebody else, are you on standby, please? So I outsource. That's something I never, ever used to do. And I rope people in. And then, of course, they ring and say, we just take the sofas to your house to do. And I go, what sofas? They've multiplied? Yes, we need 2. So that's the other thing when you work in that industry, which is, tricky. I just stretch time. I just stretch it by outsourcing, by not sleeping. And it's not sustainable. I know it's not. I tell people not to do it.
Yeah.
That's for you. I tell people not to do it. Like, maybe just cut all of this out of this conversation. Not good. Okay, no, leave it in, because actually I'm doing it less and less. I'm about to hit, nearly hit 60, and I'm slowing down. I'm becoming wiser, but I think I will stretch time. I will use it like chewing gum till my final day, I think.
Does that mean afterwards, do you then take some time to recover?
Yeah. I
Back
close
in?
the doors and curtains and just cuddle my dog and let go of everything and tell people I'm very busy, can't talk right now, and very busy recovering. And yeah, that's actually, I love that you raised that. So we've got to have the yin and yang, we've got to come back into ourselves after doing big things.
And you mentioned as you're getting older, I'm also getting older. Jeremy, not so much, but I am getting older. And you're saying you're getting some wisdom around this. So is your wisdom telling you that maybe sleep more and delegate more? Or like, how are you actually changing your patterns?
Oh, beautiful question. So I am learning to sleep better. And this is the phenomenal hack. Oh my God. Hot cocoa. Go to bed before you're tired with a big mug of real cocoa. Duh, it's so good. It gives me 8 hours. I still sort of 20% of the time I don't sleep well. So falling asleep is never a problem, but I wake up totally on, like absolutely razor sharp. And sometimes I just get up and do whatever I need to do. And then I get tired and sleep during the day, or between 6 and 8, if I can afford it, go back to bed. Older and wiser.
Yeah, I like it. Hot cocoa.
Yeah. Certainly in terms of sort of business, I'm not a natural business person. There's this great book called, what is it called? The E-Myth Revisited.
Michael Gerber.
Yeah, it is really, really good. And in a way, I guess I did what he said to do before I read the book, and I'm trying to do more of it. Just really understanding processes and procedures. And this idea is like, how could my business run without me? I'm just sort of trying to look at my day and components of tasks. What are they actually? And can I make them easier? Which is a very unnatural thing for me to approach things, but I'm just making myself. And it does make life a lot easier. I've got a client management platform that spits out invoices and receipts and appointments, and I was like, my God, that's saved me hours and hours every week.
Yeah, and I think that sort of thing is so important for the ADHD brain, because even if it actually doesn't take that much absolute time, I can find that sort of tedium so difficult that I'll just put it off forever, even though it might only take 15 minutes. Whereas if I can automate it, then it's not just about the time saving, it's also about the energy saving and the EF button doesn't need to be pressed.
Yeah, yeah. And the worst thing, Jeremy, is when you say, I'll do that later, I'll do that tonight. And that's when one invoice takes you an hour and a half because you
Yeah.
don't know who you are writing it for and what it was. What am I actually doing? Why am I here? Yeah, that is sort of where we just hit ourselves, Yeah. So I'm growing up in those respects, making things more easier for myself.
And in terms of, like you're mentioning, not being able to say no to things, that seems to be like counter to some of the productivity advice out there, which is like exercise the no button as much as you can. Is there any other kind of productivity advice out there that you feel like doesn't work for you?
Oh, so no, I am getting better at saying no to things, but I'm really distinguishing like where's the real dopamine or where's the hopeful dopamine. So I know where I'm just tempted to say yes to be a pleaser, and I go no, press the no button. But if I know it's going to be fun, like, hey, if you can knit a monkey, why wouldn't you do it? And just make everything else work around it. Other productivity hacks, things that don't work. I think SMART goals do not work. SMART goals are for people who are not in their energy levels like that. And I don't want to penalize myself for changing my mind, right? When you have your SMART goal, you just stake it all out and then you just follow from A to B. And I approach things now with a bit of wisdom and age. I approach things like, there's a reason why I'm getting stuck. There's a reason why I'm avoiding something. Why would I make myself walk in a straight line from A to B without thinking about it? There's probably the point where I'm getting stuck is probably something that I thought I might have worked out, but actually I haven't. So I allow myself to pause. It's not necessarily procrastination. It's not necessarily being lazy. It's probably being clever and authentic. And I'm probably getting stuck because there's something that doesn't sit right with me and I'm not able to articulate it. I'm just allowing myself to do it. And once I do that, I'm so much more relaxed because it allows the flexibility to go with my energy levels and no problem. So SMART goals, I think they just will trip me. And I think that's one of those things that works for neurotypical people. And I think that's awesome. That's really awesome. But it's one of those things that I think can make us feel really uncomfortable. And on that note, I think to try and do anything in a sequential and linear way, I'm not even trying. But I know I get there in, jumping or backflipping and then zooming with a rocket. I get there. It's fine. But it's so important to encourage our people, that we have our way. And we just sometimes have to have a really quiet spot and sit with it and hear the answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to sit there and hear what is there already and not necessarily, doom scroll for the answer. It's there. And that's, I guess, the biggest thing I would love to encourage people to explore is just listen to what is there.
Absolutely. You've inspired me. So we're going to take a pause now so we can listen before we continue with the rest of the podcast.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
And so we've taken a break and we've taken Swantje's advice and we're all in our energy now and we're ready to go. So Swantje, can you tell us a little bit about your morning routine and how it's evolved over time?
What is a morning routine?
So, and is that a rhetorical question or would you like me to define?
I was dreading you would ask this. I don't have one. And that is the honest answer. Because every day is different. There's no day like yesterday or the next day. So, this morning I'm doing this. Then Monday I go and see a client's employer, and today I see a client somewhere. Then I've got maybe stuff with a monkey or my dog might be ill. And it's like I try. But unlike other people, my days they are just like unruly puppies or kittens, they just move. There is no morning routine. I'm trying, but it just never, ever seems to pan out like that. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to go to the gym, and I've got my favorite gym classes and 2 of those and 2 of those. And that works for me. I need that flexibility. I need to know that that's what I'm aiming for, and no big deal if I don't make it. And if there are no unruly kittens or puppies, then I will make 2 or 3 of them, and that will make me feel good. The best thing that can happen to me in the morning, that I just get out of bed with a big mug of coffee and start work straight away, and have nothing happening for 2-3 hours, and in 2-3 hours, I get a whole day's work done. Writing everything. I'm razor sharp first thing in the morning, but I can't factor that in. I can't rely on that as a routine. I'm trying to do my diary as a routine. I work I'm on the books with a psychiatrist in Queensland, and I've got days allocated, and I work for ADHD-WA. I've got days allocated, and I've got my private clients on specific days, but it never works like that. Somebody cancels and they've paid, and I go like, you know what? I've got a spot on Friday. And so everything is just a moving big soup being stirred. And I'm sitting in the middle of it, being stirred and trying to keep my cool and my calm. Yeah. So much about routine. I don't know if you wanted to know all that detail, but that's what came to mind when you mentioned routine.
That's good. And I'm not sure if you've noticed this, but there's like a running theme of hot liquids, right? There's the hot coffee in the morning, and then there's the hot cocoa in the evening, and then there's the hot soup that you were talking about. So
Yeah.
the hot soup metaphor. On the cocoa, could you tell us a little bit about your sleep and how you switch off at night?
How do I switch off? Not difficult, because I'm so busy during the day. Not difficult at all. I've never had issues falling asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying not to be on. I mean, I can lie on the sofa watching Instagram kitten movies. And that's when there's the red flag. Then my husband just needs to drag me and take me to bed. So that's not healthy. But usually after work, if I go into my workroom and do a bit of bookbinding or illustration or engage with some creative stuff, that's fabulous to switch off. It's just brilliant. And naturally there comes this heaviness, and I just want to go to bed. Coco, read 1 page, if that, of something interesting, and gone. Yeah, but it's the problem for me is to wake up at 4:00 in the morning and be like, well, why aren't the birds up yet? Come on. I'm ready, world. In faster, I want to get up. That can be tricky to manage.
It sounds like it's not necessarily an evening routine, but you have certain go-tos that help wind you down. Is that right?
Yes, definitely.
And I love that idea of doing the bookbinding or something physical. I find when I do that really helps switch my brain off as well.
Yeah, because I think this whole thing with executive functions, everything is happening in the brain. And if we can get it out and look at it, it makes for neurotypical people so much more sense, because we can then manipulate it, shift it, twist it. We can count it. We can lay it out. We can spot it. We can rearrange it. We struggle doing all of that in our brains inside, but we've got what it takes. So we've always got to take it out of the brain. And I love showing people how they can do it and how it works for them, because it's often a real game changer.
100%. Now, if people would like to connect with you or find your work, what's the best place for them to find you online?
I guess they can have a look at my website, which is doingdone.com.au. And they can find me on LinkedIn. That is just under my name. I've started a Facebook recently, just doing done. Yeah, I don't really, the whole social media thing doesn't come super naturally to me. I find that's a bit of a chore, I've got to say. I had this idea, this shows my age. that I would connect with a couple of fabulous psychiatrists, and because my psychiatrist is fabulous, and just, work with them. And I would do what they're not able to do, and they do what obviously I'm not able to do because I'm not a medical practitioner. But I haven't found my tribe in that world. And so I just wasn't prepared to having to do social media or tell people that I exist. And yeah, but I guess that's where my drawing comes in. I don't post a lot of blah. I just a few drawings about missing executive function buttons, for instance, or just trying to translate my thoughts and feelings about the world as a neurodivergent person in one image, and then people can look at it.
I think we'll make that the show image for this episode. So I'd love to have that image if you could share it, and we'll link also to your website and some of the other things that you've mentioned there.
Amazing. Super.
Swantje, it's been wonderful having you on. Do you have any final words or ask for our audience?
Just sit with it, guys. Sit with it. Life can be so hard. Sit with it and try and listen to the answer. It sounds so simple, but I think we all underestimate our own wisdom. We're so used to asking others and trying to find it outside ourselves. But, you'd be surprised if you really try and listen what you feel and what you hear. So that is the only bit. Yeah.
Wonderful. And we'll wrap the show with that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.